Alex, kick us off, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's the important one we just talked about, as it has some big predictive power, and right now a very slim margin for former President Donald Trump. This has been going back and forth all night, about 60% of the vote in, so it's getting closer, but these two have been flip-flopping in Northampton County all night long. It's not a super big county. It doesn't have that many votes compared to some of the counties around it near Philadelphia, but just because of that predictive power, always fun to keep an eye on. But there's some other counties too that have some really big power here. You go up here to where Scranton is in Lackawanna County. That is the home of President Joe Biden. He performed okay there, 54% in 2020.
Let's take a look at those numbers.
Yeah, we can go to these numbers right now. 54%. That was an increase from 50% that Hillary Clinton got back in 2016. And now in 2024, we see Kamala Harris kind of right in the middle there. She's at 51% right now, a little bit higher than she was about 30 minutes ago, but she really wants to stay in that 51-52 range or higher, because this is a place that Democrats usually win, and usually by margins larger than this 3%. And then another big one, you go right next to it here to Luzerne County. This is a one that's over 50% vote in right now. They're getting their votes in, and this is one that the Republicans have enjoyed pretty good leads in over the past couple of years. 56 right now for former President Trump. That's about where it was 4 years ago. This is one where the Republicans thought they could pick up some votes. So you kind of see these two neighboring counties right now, both with really big impacts and kind of holding where they were in 2020. We'll see if that changes as the rest of the votes come in.
Absolutely, Alex.
Our very own Alex Burstein takes a look at a roller coaster 4 months on the trail.
That's in 2020, something that's rarely been seen before. On July 21st, President Joe Biden dropped out of the race, and just 17 days later, Vice President Kamala Harris became the party's new nominee.
Away from the mouth.
I accept your nomination to be president.
Onondaga County Election Commissioner Dustin Zarney says this change led to drastic registration changes in 2024.
Big spike did happen after that changeover in late July, early August. We really saw no real big changes in voter registration all the way up until that point.
Those additions were mainly Democrats and undecided voters. Syracuse University political science professor Stephen White says a term as VP has turned Harris much more to the middle.
And I think if you look at her actual policy platform and her speeches she's giving now, clearly to the right of a lot of the discourse in 2020.
Other points, SU professor Grant Rear says, have been left vague, something not usual when candidates have the traditional year plus on the trail. This has happened during an appeal to the youth.
And it's not to convince younger voters to be Democratic. They're already pretty heavily Democratic. The question with those voters is always, will they show up?
Those questions answered today at polling places like here in Syracuse and around the nation. And just how many of those moderate and youth voters show up for Harris very well could determine who's in the Oval Office in January. For Election Night 2024, I'm Alex Burstein.
Alex, thank you.
We go now to team coverage on this race. Analysts Alex Burstein and Peter Barry are here to break down these campaigns. Alex, we'll start with you. What can we expect to see from John Mannion?
Yeah, Mannion is a state senator who's trying to make that jump into the national scene. But first, let's take a look at what his resume is. He's a Syracuse native, grew up here in the city, went through the SUNY schooling system, and then made the jump to politics after being a biology teacher. So he's really into education and has now been in the state senate for the past 4 years. Every time he's in the race, though, it is very close. We'll go back to 2018, the first time he ran, lost by 2% in a district that is primarily Republican for the state senate. So, did okay his first time around, came back in 2020, gets a solid win, 5% to make his first political victory. And then the really close one, 2022, 10 votes decided he's able to get the win, stay in the state senate. Now he's trying to make the jump all the way to U.S. Congress and flip this seat in New York 22. So what matters to Mannion? We talked about the education stuff, in the student loan forgiveness, has had some big education wins in the state senate. He also wants to expand affordable housing. He's the pro-choice candidate in this race against Brandon Williams. And then finally, Micron. He's very big into that, was helping bring the plant to Syracuse. And this is what he had to say at a debate last month.
They are investing in our community already. They're investing in our STEAM school. They're investing in the Museum of Science and Technology. They're investing in a community engagement board, which is making sure that there's going to be opportunity for everyone to obtain these jobs, particularly our most disenfranchised communities.
Well, Mannion's getting some support from a lot of people across the state and across the nation. You look at some of these big teachers unions from New York and around the country. He is an educator and he's getting the support from them, but also some major political power players. You look at the former president, Barack Obama, who was doing remote phone calls for Mannion, and also the state Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer. So some big time political endorsements. And so what are the projections saying? Actually, right now, Mannion is favored to win by a narrow margin, but he's one of these few Republican current seats that are projected to flip here tonight, so that'll be something to watch. And the main reason why, it's these districts. We'll talk about it more later, but district number 22 has switched a little bit in the past couple of years with redistricting. A lot of Utica and Syracuse voters are Democratic. They're both now in this district, and that's been big here for John Mannion.
Alex Burstein. Alex, I mentioned a little bit earlier today my theory on this basket of issues thing, and how in Trump's basket of issues is the economy, which tends to be the most important issue on voters' mind in every election, but especially in this election. How did Kamala Harris try to make up those voters' minds on the economy when Trump pulled so far ahead of her on that?
Yeah, I mean, they just had completely different messages. For Trump, it was all about continuing his tax cuts for everyone and increasing these tariffs, which he was trying to get to the minds of the middle class and those working class people. For Harris, she was really focused on the middle class. We heard that time and time again. She wanted to only cut taxes for those making under $400,000 and had a much more focused message. But what we saw today in exit polls coming from a variety of news organizations is it was the Republicans who really cared about the economy because they just didn't feel like Joe Biden did good with it. They feel like the economy really needed a switch up. With the Democrats, it wasn't the same issue. They didn't feel like it was as bad of a statement. So we saw that the Republican voters really heavy on the economy. They showed out to the polls, and that's what we're seeing so far.
Yeah, I want to switch gears a little bit, and I apologize to our lovely folks in control, but I do want to talk a little bit with you about Pennsylvania because that's the race you've been following tonight. I want to pull up the map if I can here. Take a look at Philadelphia County. This is really important for Kamala Harris to turn out voters in Philadelphia County, primarily black voters in the city. We're looking right now, Kamala Harris has 78% to 20% for Donald Trump. I want to jump back to 2020 if we can. Joe Biden had 81% compared to Donald Trump's 17%. Alex, is this a good sign for Harris?
It's not a good sign. I mean, the only positive she can maybe take out is we're seeing higher turnout. At least that's what the expectation is when this number hits 100%. There was a lot of early voting, and then also today there was a lot of voters who came out. But it's the same thing over in Allegheny County with Pittsburgh. These are the two biggest cities in the state. These are two cities that have very high black populations where the Democrats usually do very well in. And we haven't seen any drastic drop-offs for the Democrats, but they knew
it's close, but it's a game of inches, right?
It's a game of inches. You have to win it by a lot if you're going to do it, and they just haven't had that.
I also want to go to our swingy county, Bucks County. Right now, Trump winning there by 0.2 of a percentage point.
Pulling ahead since we last checked in with you.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's another county that there's still some room to be going. They
55%.
They haven't been going as quickly as some of the other counties, but that's the one that's been predicting it recently, and that just has not been here tonight.
Well, Alex, hey, thanks so much for joining us. Talking about issues and talking about that all-important Pennsylvania. Well, when we come back, we'll have more on all of our election night coverage. Once again, thank you for joining us on this historic night.